If you're sending emails without proper segmentation, you're leaving serious money on the table for your brand. Because not only are you going to have higher unsubscribe rates and spam rates, but also more importantly, it's going to absolutely tank your deliverability over a long period of time, which means fewer people will open and see your emails in the first place. But when done right, segmentation can ensure you're delivering the right message to the right audience at the right time, boosting your engagement, but also, in many cases, doubling your email revenue. In this video, I'm going to break down the exact segmentation strategy that we use in-house for our 7 to 9-figure brands, including an overview of segmentation, why it matters and how it works, but also how to actually segment your emails in the right way, as well as actionable items of the key elements that you can implement starting today. Let's dive in. Before we dive into an overview of what segmentation actually is, let me make very clear the difference between segments versus lists. A segment is simply a dynamic group of contacts filtered by a very specific condition, meaning that this segment will grow and shrink depending on whether or not these contacts meet the condition. On the other hand, a list is static, meaning that once someone is on it, they will remain on the list until they are either manually removed by themselves or by you, or an email bounces. Now, the biggest mistake that brand owners make is batching and blasting their entire list. So here's the general rule of thumb that you can apply to your segmentation tailored specifically to your sending frequency. Essentially, it's kind of on a spectrum of how strict you want your segmentation to be. The higher the frequency in which you're sending, so for example, if you're sending 3 to 4 emails per week or daily email campaigns, the more stricter you actually want to be with your segmentation. Meaning that you're going to be targeting pretty tightly engaged audiences, meaning your 30, 60, and maybe even 90-day engaged segments. Now, if you're sending at a lower frequency, maybe once per week, or a couple times a month, then you're going to be wanting to focus on targeting more of a broader segment, meaning segments like signups last 365 days, 120 to 180 day engaged segments. Because the goal ultimately here is to be able to send your emails to as many people on the list as possible, whilst maintaining a high amount of engagement, aka maintaining open rates above 40%. This is going to be essentially achieved by you being able to choose the correct timeframes in order to segment for. And if you do this, you're going to be able to maintain pretty high standards of deliverability, meaning that you're only going to be landing in promotional tabs as well as spam inboxes at a very, very, very low percentage of the time. So here's a few stats for you guys to kind of look out for. So typically your engaged segment should be hitting 60 to 70% of your total list size. Meaning if you have 100,000 people on the list, you should be frequently sending to about 60 to 70,000 of those people. If it's too much higher than 60 to 70% of your whole list, you're probably under segmenting. Whereas if it's far too below that, it probably is going to signal that your list is not very clean. If you're struggling with deliverability, I suggest you book in a free call with my team. We'd love to help you explore the potential root cause, as well as diagnose further how we can push revenues for your brand. Now, let's get into how to actually segment your list. In order to segment your list effectively, you need to match your email frequency to your engagement level. If you're getting 40% or more open rate on your segments, it means that your subscribers are highly engaged. These people should get all of your emails. Meaning if you're sending, let's say 10 campaigns on a monthly basis, your highly engaged subscribers should get all 10 of these emails. Whereas if you have a medium engaged segment, meaning that the open rate for this segment is anywhere from 30 to 40%, you should be sending around 70% of your monthly campaigns to this audience. Now, if you have a pretty low to medium engaged segment, meaning your open rates for this segment are between 20 to 30%, then they should be receiving about half of all of the campaigns that you're sending on a monthly basis. And lastly, if you have subscribers where you haven't really engaged with them for a pretty long time, or they're at churn risk, meaning that they're rarely opening your emails, maybe anywhere from 10 to 20% of the time, they should only be receiving emails with massive offer incentives, such as sales periods during Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Memorial Day, Thanksgiving, and those types of major public holidays. If you do those things, I promise you your deliverability is going to be decently well maintained. Because if you're batching and blasting, that is literally the quickest way to end up in spam for your entire subscriber base. So lastly, let me tell you about the 4 main segments that you're going to need to create no matter your brand size or list size, how exactly to create them, as well as actionable items in order for you to implement today to benefit your own email marketing. The first segment that every single brand owner should use is your 90-day engaged segments. This is essentially going to be your bread and butter audience, and it's super easy to create. Now, caveat to this, when I say 90 days, this can really go up to 365 days engaged if you have very good deliverability as well as you're sending at a very low frequency. As I said earlier in this video, if you're sending, let's say, daily, then maybe a 30-day engaged audience would be much more relevant to you. So how to actually create this audience? The conditions for this segment is opened or clicked an email at least once within the last insert your relevant time frame. So in this case, it could be 90 days, or for you guys, it might be 30, 60, 120, 180, and so forth. The purpose behind this segment is that it's the main segment that you're going to be targeting for majority of your campaigns. And also, it's going to be the one that, generally speaking, will yield the highest revenue. The next one is going to be your VIP customers list. So this is essentially going to be for people who are either returning customers or placed orders with your store 3 or more times in a row within the last insert time frame. So if you have a high frequency of returning customers, then you might want to tighten this window to, let's say, a 90-day period. Whereas if you have a slightly longer sales cycle, then you might want to tighten this to, let's say, 365 days instead. The goal with this segment is to be able to push exclusive offers as well as discounts, giving them early access and really just treating them as a legit VIP customer. The next segment here is your win-back segment. So this is essentially going to be for people who have not placed an order with you for a while. Generally speaking, for our clients, is anywhere from 120 days all the way to about a year's time. And here, what you're trying to do is trying to get them back as a customer, and the incentives that we are able to give here to our audience is going to be pretty insane relative to what we give to the main list, because essentially it's free money, right? Because the likelihood is they're not going to actually return as a customer, which is why it's important to set the time conditions to a decent length of time. And lastly, it's the sunset segment. So the definition for this is people who have received 10 or more emails within a given time frame. It could be 90 days, it could be 180 days, and they have not opened or clicked any of them in that given time frame. So essentially with this segment, as it grows, you're going to want to suppress these guys on a quarterly basis, especially after February 18th, 2025. Klaviyo is actually going to be charging you guys on your active profiles as well as your monthly email sending volume. With this change, it's going to add a lot more pressure to you guys to keep your list clean and well maintained, as otherwise your Klaviyo bills could potentially skyrocket. There are also other segments for you to really consider. So just a few to think about would be people with active balances on their gift cards, people who are window shoppers, so people who have engaged with the website, active on site, or added to cart, viewed product, or started checkout. And also like cross-sell segments where people have placed an order on this specific product, cross-selling them into adjacent product categories. Now that you know some of the core segments to be using, let's talk about how to actually build segments within Klaviyo. First things first, you're going to want to go over to the lists and segments tab. In here, you're going to click create new list or segment, and you're going to select a segment. You're then going to configure your conditions. Go back to the previous section of this video if you forgot what those conditions are. The main thing to bear in mind is you need to use the logic conditions in terms of and or correctly. And then lastly, it's just to test and optimize, right? If you see your open rates being way too high, try broadening the segments a little bit. If you see your engagement being a little bit low, then try tightening them a little bit. So now that you actually know how to build these segments, let me give you a 4-step homework to do to massively increase your campaign performance. Number 1, go inside of Klaviyo, create the segments that I highlighted, the 4 in terms of your engaged segments, VIP, sunset, and win back. Test some different time windows. So I would probably start more conservatively with 30 and then 60 and then 90, maybe 120 if you're seeing good engagement numbers, and go from there. Segmentation isn't one of these like nice to have things. It's something that you really need to master in order to have the highest possible performance on your email channels. So if this is a bit overwhelming to you, or if your store is already producing 50,000 a month or more in revenue and you want your time and attention back to focus on higher leverage activities, then you should book a call with myself or my team in the description below. And we'd love to help you out in terms of giving you guys the necessary pointers as well as advice on how to actually scale your email marketing as we do free 360 audits of your retention systems. I'll see you in the next one.